Steam Locomotives in Miniature at the Steam Workshop, Rebuilding a 3-inch Scale Garrett Traction Engine, Part 2. And this episode finds me working on the bunker tank. This is the part of the traction engine that sticks out at the back, and it's called the bunker tank because under the coal bunker is a water tank, and this one's slightly damaged. So what I'm currently doing is drilling out a couple of the rivets. This wouldn't win any prizes for the tidiest riveting in the first place. And why am I drilling out these rivets in this area of the bunker tank? Well, because as you can see clearly it's damaged. There's quite a large dint at the left-hand corner. How this was done I don't know. It could have been done in transit, the engine could have backed into something, or something else could have run into the engine. Either way, it's unsightly and it needs repairing. And more to the point, it needs repairing properly. So anyway, back to the plot. I'm drilling out these rivets so that I can get a lever inside to pull out some of the dint. Initially I used an old drill bit, which was okay, it pulled out some of the dint, and then John made a hooked sliding hammer, and that brought a bit more of the metal out. But neither John or I are expert panel beaters. The easiest way to fix this would have been to just rub it down like I'm doing at the moment with a small sanding drum and just slap body filler on it, but no, that's not a good repair because copper is flexible, body filler isn't quite so flexible. In this clip John's using an oxyacetylene torch just to locally heat up the tank and anneal it to make the copper softer. If you don't know what oxyacetylene is, then I think you need to get out more. Oxyacetylene is a mixture of acetylene gas and oxygen, and it's really hot. The flame is incredibly hot. You can weld pieces of steel together with an oxyacetylene torch if you know what you're doing, but in this case we don't want to do that. We just need to soften the copper by heating it to a red heat just on this corner, without blowing any holes in the copper. What was that bright yellow flash? Well, that was when John turned off the oxygen supply to the torch and it was just the acetylene gas burning. So as I mentioned earlier, with the help of John's special slide hammer that he made up and my efforts with a bent twist drill, the dint became a good bit less, but it still shows, it's still not nice to look at, and of course there are still 2 holes where the rivets were. Before proceeding, it's time for a health and safety warning. Warning. Many things in the workshop can cause injury or death, so I recommend taking no chances. Always wear PPE, personal protective equipment. Always take health and safety seriously. And I'm wearing PPE as shown in the previous clip because I'm doing this. I'm using plumber's solder, and this contains lead, which is poisonous. These days you can get lead-free solder, but we're not using that. We're using the real thing. This is lead solder. First of all, I thoroughly fluxed the area using a liquid called Baker's fluid, and this flux, when heated, chemically cleans the metal so that the solder bonds to it. And you can see what I'm doing here. It's a bit of a balancing act. If you put too much heat on, the solder melts and runs off the work. But if you apply too little heat, you get what's called a dry joint. And as we all know, a dry joint can be very unpleasant. The first layer of solder, though, needs to go on hot, and yes, it will run off, but the entire surface of the part of the copper that I'm working on gets what is called tinned. You can see that the solder is well stuck to the copper. So now by using less heat, I can build up the solder on the surface of the copper, and that will fill the dent. The cloth is just used for wiping the solder. It's a thick cotton cloth, and this just smooths out the solder a bit when it's almost molten. With the heat turned off, it's handwork from now on. First of all with a very rough file, followed by a slightly smoother file, and finally, to get a good finish, emery cloth. Filing around the rivets is difficult, and these rivets are going to need a little bit more attention to make them stand out a bit because the solder is trying to bury them. So don't forget to wear your PPE when you're doing this because you don't want to be breathing this stuff in. I don't think it's very good for you. And now that I'm at the emery cloth stage, you can see that it's taking shape. The dint's more or less gone entirely. Well, in fact, it has gone entirely. I've seen a couple of TV programs where people are restoring vintage cars using this method, and it certainly seems to work for them, and watching these people work is an education because they're very good at it. For me, this is not really my forte. I don't really do coppersmithing and bodywork repairs, but the thing about working at the steam workshop is you have to be able to do a wide cross-section of different things. In an odd sort of a way, this is quite a satisfying job. And the good thing about it, as far as I can see, this is the proper way to repair things like this. As I said earlier in the video, it would have been quicker to just use car body filler, but this is far better. It's a more permanent repair. This is a small 3.5-inch gauge Great Western locomotive. And yes, I know this is not the Garrett traction engine, but there is a chronological order that we have to follow, and at the moment I'm waiting for Dave to paint the main body of the traction engine, then I can start putting it back together. But there's no rush because there's always plenty to do at the steam workshop. I've been asked to get this engine ready for a hydraulic test, so I'm not putting much air into it to make it run. I doubt if it would blow up anyway, but I'm only putting about 25 to 30 pounds per square inch into the engine, and it runs beautifully in forward and reverse. To be perfectly honest, I really am struggling with this engine. It's too small for my big hands. In this clip, I'm removing the pressure gauge from the siphon. And after this, I fitted a blanking plug to the end of the siphon. Then I removed the safety valve and put this funnel in its place, and here I'm filling the boiler right to the top, and it's important to make sure there's no air in the boiler at all when you do a hydraulic test. But for me, this job was a total fail. When I pumped up the boiler with the hydraulic pump to twice working pressure, the regulator leaked badly and the water ran all over the bench. And now we have a problem. Look at the length of the smoke box. In order to cap off the pipes to the cylinders to stop the water leaking out, I need to be able to get my hand into the smoke box, but it's impossible. My hand is far too big. So this is a job for one of the people at the steam workshop with much smaller hands than me. So instead of doing this job, I'll have a look round the steam workshop. This is the project that John's working on. This is Little Bear, and this engine was built in 1912. It's very old indeed. And to put it in perspective, when this engine was built, the Titanic was sinking. And now John's bringing this engine up to date with new cylinders and a new boiler. This engine's called a B1, a very popular design, and this one's come back in because the regulator wouldn't open fully, but now it's fixed and the regulator's fine. Right at the far end, near the main door, there's an awful lot of spannering going on here. This is John and Dave refitting the main drive gears to this traction engine, which were very, very noisy. John had to remachine them, which should stop the horrible whining noise that the engine was making when it was running. And that's about it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful.